Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session titled Cultivating Collaboration, Project Development Processes and Tools, produced by the Themed Entertainment Association Next Gen Committee, which seeks to introduce students and recent graduates to our industry, the TEA, and their own potential as future themed entertainment dreamers, creators, and doers. My name is Joe Fox, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today we're going to talk about how projects turn into real-world results and how those just beginning their careers can leverage the best practices of the community and eventually contribute to them as well. While we are a smaller industry than something like the motion picture industry, our projects are often produced on a very large scale with millions of potential visitors. Today we're joined by three outstanding panelists: Aimee Roy, Communications Manager for BaAM Productions, Chris Willrich, Project Manager for DJ Willrich Limited, and Clint Brinker, Director of Projects for Birket Engineering. We're going to turn it over to Aimee for the first part of today's session. Aimee, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Joe, and hello to everyone tuning in. Today's TEA talk will explore examples of project development processes used by TEA member companies, along with a few case studies illustrating these processes in action. As a starting point, let's just take a step back and clarify what we mean by the phrase project development process. When we refer to this phrase, we're referring to a formalized and agreed process that all aspects of a project will move through. This is made up of agreed steps or phases for development and review. Keep in mind that the steps, timing, and even naming of the phases can differ based on the type of project, whether it's a temporary event or permanent attraction, for example, or even the type of company. Some companies or industries refer to project development process in a number of different ways. Perhaps you may be more familiar with one of the phrases seen here. For example, some refer to their process as their methodology. Other phrases include approach to work or work plan. This list isn't exhaustive by any means, but it's worth being aware of the various names that are out there, which are all aimed at understanding one thing: the means to an end. So we understand what a project development process is, but why would we follow a set process? Well, there are some obvious and perhaps some not so obvious reasons for establishing and following a particular methodology to guide your work and projects. Of course, having a set of steps in place provides clear understanding for all stakeholders involved. No project is ever the same as the next. There could be thousands of stakeholders involved in the development of a new theme park, or maybe it's a small team of illustrators whose end product will be a set of concept illustrations. Regardless of the size and scope, having a clear roadmap to follow will help steer the project in the right direction. To this end, it's important to also note that having a process in place helps foster or cultivate collaboration among team members. It's not so much a conveyor belt of ideas, but should be thought of as a step-by-step means of gathering feedback and exploring ideas as a group. A process should account for and build in this collaboration while also documenting and formalizing those moments when milestones have been met and the project can move from one phase into the next. Having a project development process in place also helps manage workload for all involved by determining how notes and feedback will be collected and responded to as a project evolves. Now, apart from the practical and logistical reasons for following a set process, there is incredible value in terms of a marketing and promotional asset. Nearly every request for proposal that we respond to at BaAM requires us to clearly communicate what our methodology is and how we will follow it to achieve the project's goals. Having a documented process that everyone on your team is familiar with can be a huge marketing and promotional asset for your company. The reason your methodology is often requested as part of an RFP process is because it illustrates your professionalism and expertise to potential clients. It also conveys to them that you have established a dependable means of success, that you're familiar with the steps that need to be taken in order to see a particular type of project from start to finish, and that you've included scheduled opportunities for client input throughout. Often a client wants to see that you'll truly collaborate. Their expectation is to be included in the process, and your work approach should clearly outline where these opportunities are factored in. Now, before we jump in, I'd like to include a bit of a disclaimer. These case studies, tips, and methodologies that Clint, Chris, and I will discuss today are not meant to be cookie-cutter methodologies that will work or even should work for your next big project. Our goal for this webinar is that you'll be able to form some key takeaways that will influence the next project you work on, shedding light on aspects that you should consider and ways to track your work in the future. All this to say that not every project can be approached in exactly the same way, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a process out there that's right for every project. There are a few reasons why it's impossible to prescribe one set process for the Themed Entertainment Association and its projects. One reason is simply because there are a variety of projects that fall under this broad category of work, each with unique criteria. Now, the Themed Entertainment Association's tagline notes that it represents creators of compelling places and experiences worldwide. While this, of course, includes theme parks and attractions, it also includes museums, science centers, zoos, aquariums, resorts, retail spaces, restaurants, and even brand-based experiences and activations. With this in mind, it becomes glaringly obvious that the project development requirements of a zoo would, of course, differ from those of a restaurant. And one process could not possibly be applied to all. Within themed entertainment, there are a variety of perspectives that can be called upon depending on the needs of a project. The contributions required by artists, architects, producers, fabricators, managers, or operators will help determine the process that the project must go through. These considerations and needs should be evaluated at the start of a project so that phasing, scheduling, and budgeting can be addressed accordingly. Which leads me to the next point. Another key ingredient to keep in mind is that your audience should play a role in the development of your project. This could happen in a couple different ways. For example, sometimes creative teams will think about the guest's interaction by walking in the guest's shoes as the design and creative thinking evolves. Or perhaps guest feedback is incorporated into project development as part of focus groups, allowing a project and its team to find improvements for the visitor experience from the visitor perspective. So we've established that there are several types of themed entertainment projects out there, a multitude of experts with various backgrounds lending their expertise, as well as multiple stakeholders to consider. But is there a common language or means of organizing that can bring order to the seeming chaos? Of course there is, and that's where the tools of project management come in. So this diagram was created by the Themed Entertainment Association to explain the project development process and the phases that a themed entertainment project often goes through. We'll take a closer look at each of these phases in just a second, but let's just take a quick look at the big picture here. We can see that there are 4 main phases that the association has identified: the project program, design, implementation, and opening. Arrows from one phase to the next illustrate how it's expected that each phase will build upon the work completed in the previous phase. Communication is, of course, absolutely key during the handover from one stage into the next, especially if that handover involves new team members or an entirely new project lead. To reiterate, the phases that we're looking at now are a model of how a typical themed entertainment project might evolve. We'll explore this process a bit further, but as we'll see later in this presentation, there are other means of orchestrating project development. No single method is best. So let's take a look at what's involved in each of the phases seen here. Project program. This is where the germ of an idea makes itself known. Perhaps it's inspired by a burst of creativity, or perhaps an RFP, a request for proposal, has been issued by a municipality for an exciting new opportunity, or perhaps visitor feedback points to a few areas of improvement at your park and new ideas are being explored to meet this need. Whatever it might be, the project idea is what kickstarts the process into action. Keep in mind that it's entirely possible that the full scope of a project isn't even known in these beginning moments. Time is required to pull the necessary information together from various experts and resources. This is when project teams can explore the creative possibilities through brainstorming sessions, ideation sessions, or creative charrettes, and then start to ground these ideas in concrete thinking, evaluating ideas in terms of their budget and timing realities. The intent here may be a combination of data collection and research taken to better inform project planning. This research and data collection and initial planning help refine the idea, which sits at the core of the project program. And once we have a better sense of what is being created, then our project managers, operational specialists, or conceptual designers can all contribute to the program. By program, we mean the set of criteria for the project's design and implementation. At BaAM, we have another name for this deliverable, which is the project charter. Ultimately, this program or project charter We'll define the goals, objectives, creative inspiration, the budget parameters, scheduling guidelines, language requirements, and any other special or unique conditions that should be recorded at the outset. This program will be vital. It will be a vital communication tool and a sort of living document that becomes a reference point or a touch point for everyone on the project. New information can be added as it becomes known. We take what we learn in the first phase and apply it to the next steps of our project development. The program carries forward and informs the design. Now, depending on the size of the project itself, design development can become quite extensive. This diagram illustrates how design typically begins with schematic design, getting ideas onto paper so that the team can begin detailing and shaping the initial creative thinking. The design will evolve from schematic design into further design development, adding more and more details, to the point when final documentation and construction documents can be created, providing exact details and production instructions for the final product. Quite often, teams may use milestones that represent percentage completion, such as 50% schematic or 90% schematic. This tracks and manages the large amount of work that happens within these phases. These milestones should be determined from the outset and are an opportunity to gather feedback from all the necessary parties. Approval or sign-off for one phase of work initiates the next phase. Once the project is ready to move on, the specs or specifications and construction drawings are carried forward into the implementation phase. So we've made it to the implementation stage. We've followed our project program throughout the previous two phases, never losing sight of our budget and schedule. We have our specs and drawings ready to pass along to the team of vendor partners who will be charged with taking our designs and bringing them to life. Keep in mind that the staff managing the implementation phase may have also been involved in the previous two phases. However, there may be new fabricators or casting managers or media specialists that are entirely new to the project, which is why the project program, specs, and drawings are crucial to communicate the project's evolution. As these final pieces come together, the quality will be monitored, owner acceptance will be documented, and keys turned over for opening day. We have installed the necessary parts and everything is in working order. The owner, institution, client group, whomever it might be, has accepted the deliverables, so opening day is upon us. As part of this step, training may be required for operational staff or customer service reps to learn how to operate the equipment or guide guests through the space. There may be rehearsals or soft openings, an opportunity for the ride, exhibit, media, or the show to go through a few cycles as a way to make sure everything is in working order before the curtain goes up. And even when opening day has come and gone, quite often our work is not done. The ever-important step of closing out the project is an opportunity to document everything that we may need to communicate and continue operations in your absence. So warranty information is key here, as well as maintenance instructions. Depending on company procedures, this may be the time to gather feedback from your client. Review what worked or didn't work so that lessons learned on this project can be incorporated in your future work. And once you've made it through these closeout procedures, then it's time to celebrate for a job well done. So now that we've got a bit of a basic understanding of how themed entertainment projects are organized, let's take a look at how companies within the industry approach their work. So at BaAM, our body of work is like that of the themed entertainment industry. It's vast and varied. We specialize in creating incredible experiences. Our projects include large-scale sports events, live entertainment productions, museum and science center exhibits, and brand activations. A quick look at the photos here gives a good impression of the types of projects that our teams are actively involved in at any given time. Which leads us to the process that BaAM employs for a project. Like the disclaimer from a few slides back, each project will have its unique characteristics and requirements to be integrated into the development process. But in terms of its core components, this is how we approach our work at BaAM. Look familiar? There are a number of similarities that we can identify between this process and the one we just reviewed. While the BaAM project development process is customized depending on the type of project that we're working on, this core process provides an important framework and structure for our project teams to follow. It also provides a common vocabulary for our work, keeping everyone on the same page in terms of phasing and the types of deliverables involved. At BaAM, we use the first phase as an opportunity to meet with project stakeholders to review and confirm the project knowns. Project knowns are things like budget, schedule, location, project plan, operating plan, and so on. It's important to get acquainted with those involved on the project and review the steps that will be taken towards the final goal. We take time to listen to the client's vision and any previous creative work that's been done. This initial phase also includes design strategy, an opportunity for creative brainstorming, exploring key messaging and thematic ideas that will be used to inform phase 2 of the project. Moving into phase 2, we start to refine the design, taking time to organize the space that we're creating. These ideas are detailed so that eventually the final design package, construction drawings, and specifications can be provided to the fabricators and media specialists. Close contact is maintained with all vendors and suppliers throughout production and installation in order to provide quality control, but also to ensure that the project stays on time and on budget. The 5th phase is time that we take with our client post-event, post-show, or once an exhibit has opened, to review the objectives that we had at the outset and how those objectives were met. It's an opportunity to review the lessons we learned along the way. And if it's a permanent installation, then we might review important maintenance procedures and confirm points of contact for questions or requests that might come up in the future. This is an excellent time to document the project and record its achievements, thinking about the challenges that came up and the solutions that were determined. So let's take a look at a few project examples to explore our process a bit further. Here we see a couple images from the Cupid's Legacy Center in Cupid's, Newfoundland. The Cupid's Legacy Center is a 3,000 square foot museum with a working archaeological lab and family history community center. It was built to share and document the history of Cupid's, a small town on Canada's east coast, which is the site of the first English settlement in Canada. The center opened in 2010 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the Cupid's plantation. And even though this is a relatively small project, we still apply the same thinking and organizing in its development. I'm referencing this example not only because it was a project that had an array of stakeholders, including local historians, archaeologists, artists, and more, but this is also an example of how we set milestones at the outset in order to guide a project forward. So at BaAM, we use milestones as a way to track our work, manage our resources, and gather feedback. During the design development stage, we often schedule design packages to be issued at regular intervals. For example, we may issue a 50% schematic package to gather comments and changes from a predetermined group of stakeholders, most likely the client. By schematic design, we're referring to a means of refining the look and feel of all design for the project, which includes graphics, finishes and materials, lighting, millwork, and so on. The particular example seen here is an excerpt taken from a 100% detailed design package for the Cupid's Legacy Center. So preceding this deliverable, our client received a 75% detailed design package, which means that the feedback that we received on the 75% design package were included in our 100% detailed design package drawings. The timing of the milestones should be determined at the outset as part of the project kickoff and project chartering stage. And milestones become a crucial point within the project for gathering feedback and progressing to the next stage of development. BaAM's event work follows guidelines based on our project development process as well. Just as we would expect to kick off a project with a project charter for a permanent exhibition, we do the same with an event. So here we're actually looking at photos and an initial concept drawing for the 100th Grey Cup Festival, which was held in Toronto in 2012. The Grey Cup is a championship game for the Canadian Football League, held at the end of November each season, and this particular event was an 11-day festival designed as an invitation to the nation, reaching out to Canadian football fans from across Canada to come to Toronto to celebrate 100 years of the sport, which actually differs in quite a few ways from the American counterpart. So as part of this project, a project charter was initiated at startup and updated as needed throughout the course of the project. The project charter was shared among all the team members, and for this particular project, the charter included items like a vision statement. The charter had roles and responsibilities of team members. It included key project milestones, event dates, a risk register outlining potential risks with ways to mitigate those risks. It had a project budget, list of sponsors, media partners, and more. Similar to the Cupid's Legacy Center, the 100th Grey Cup Festival involved a design development process with key milestones. Of course, an important element of any project will be the budget, and it's worth noting that as design progresses, the budget detail also becomes more refined. Just as the creative ideas become more detailed and understood with time, so too does the budget. Over time, materials and finishes are known, quotes are provided by fabricators and suppliers, production methods are confirmed, all of which help the budget take shape. And a phased budget doesn't mean that the target budget changes, rather the realities of the budget begin to inform the design more over time. So as I wrap up, I think there are 3 key takeaways to keep in mind when implementing your project development process. It's been referred to several times over the past few minutes, but providing opportunities for input and feedback from key stakeholders should be a priority. Indicating when and how this feedback will happen from the outset will help manage the dialogue, keeping the process on task and as productive as possible. Similarly, scheduling milestones in the early stages of a project will generate that roadmap that everyone on the project can follow. Team members can see what the goals are, what is expected of them by a given time, and how each milestone contributes to the project as a whole. And of course, as the project is shaped and more detail is known, then the budget can also become more defined. Just as you can literally see more detail incorporated into the plans for the experience you're creating as the project evolves, the budget can also be brought into focus with a phased approach. So that wraps up my section, and now I'd like to hand things over to our next speaker.
Thank you very much, Aimee. So if you have a question for Aimee or any of our presenters, feel free to submit those questions through the question feature of GoToWebinar. If for some reason you have any difficulty with the question feature, just send the Q&A into the TEA host-Q&A, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered during our Q&A period at the end of the presentations today. Next up, we're going to hear from Chris Willrich, Project Manager for DJ Willrich. He's recently been involved in several award-winning projects, including the gorgeous Titanic Museum in Belfast, Ireland. He's also been involved with the Fort Edmonton Capitol Theatre in Edmonton, Canada, and Bletchley Park Visitor Centre in England. So, Chris, it's over to you, and let me bring up your slides.
Right, so off we go, I guess. Thank you. So as was just mentioned, my name is Chris Willrich and I work for DJW. We are an AV systems integrator and consultant company that was started in the 80s by David. That's him. And then that's me next to him. So I started working for the company in my sort of school holidays when I was 16, building rack equipment and doing sort of off-site work that later then gets installed by the main engineers. And then I came full-time at 19, project manager at 23, and now I'm 26. So at DJW, we aid design and install audio-visual components of rides, attractions, museums. The company's been doing it for about 30 years now. So before I go and talk about what we're here to talk about, I want to tell you a quick story, the story of Timmy. There he is. At the time, Timmy was about 6 years old, and he lived in Edmonton in Canada, which is roughly about there. So he'd never been to a theme park and only seen one 3D film in the cinema. And boy, did Timmy love the cinema. So Timmy and his classmates went to Fort Edmonton Park, which is just about there. That looks a bit like that, on a school history trip. So they spent the morning running around through these streets, which are all in those sort of time periods that you can see on the screen now. And eventually, in the early afternoon, they got to Fort Edmonton Capitol Theatre. So our little friend Timmy, all excited, runs in to find out what movie he's going to go and see. So he takes a seat in our auditorium there, and the film starts. So lights go down, and a flickering slide projector comes up and starts playing a black and white film with some music in the background. The movie gets to a winter scene, and all of a sudden the walls start to ice over, everything becomes colourful, and so the building seems to freeze around him. The ice begins to crack, the building starts shaking, Timmy's chair's shaking, and Timmy has an ear-to-ear grin on his little face. So that is why I'm sure I can say everyone else that's talking on this webinar will all agree with me. That's why we all do our jobs. It's just to see those little moments of magic in someone else's eyes as opposed to sitting there and enjoying it ourselves. So back to my main point, or the first of them. The age gap. With all of the young next-geners on here, we'll have a lot of the same problems that I've come across in the last 2 or 3 years especially. People respond differently depending on their particular version of how the industry should work and how project managers should all be above a certain age, or you even get people that think women shouldn't be project managers, which is of course ridiculous. But the first thing I always have to overcome is to work out how these people are thinking and how they're going to respond to what I'm saying and my points, which sometimes do get ignored, but just because of my age, they look at me and think, how can he possibly know? So I work on sort of a principle of I will work really hard to gain the respect of someone, but then I expect them to do the same thing in return. The other thing that I've sort of wedged in here, we have in the Aimee division of the TEA NextGen Plus, which is a new thing, and it's only a little Facebook page at the moment. But the point of it is to, once you're out of NextGen, you can move into NextGen Plus and still be around people your age. So we sort of put the age cap at 30 and said anyone under 30 can join in, have a chat. And at the moment, it's only just a Facebook page to share ideas, thoughts, experiences, and all of those little sort of wins you get on a day-to-day basis that our superiors don't particularly show too much interest in. So I know there's no NextGen Plus in any other division at the moment, but with a bit of luck, it'll all start rolling out. So the next thing is, as an AV integrator, we have what I call the burden of understanding. Not only is it just like a full-time job to keep up with all of the technology and what's going on. Yeah, so not only is it a full-time job to keep up with what the latest and greatest can offer, but also to relay that to clients, designers, our installers, our directors that might have missed it. And things to keep in mind with that is that no projector, especially projector, is designed exclusively for what a designer might need. So we have to go through that, what's there in the budget, what can we use, where the projector can go, can it be hidden, and work all around that kind of thing. No technology is marketed exclusively for just one project, so again it's about adapting and taking things together to get what the designers and the clients are after. So we have to manipulate all of these different technologies to put them all together, persuade them all that they want to work with each other, and then try and support it afterwards. So we call AV integration the final crusade. So AV is often sort of boxed into a very small stage at the end of a project where the building contractor 9 times out of 10 is overrun sometimes through no fault of their own. Then we've also got the electricians, the set works people, and it all goes through. And because our stuff is all powered and needs to be in sort of very late in the day, our installation period gets squished. If our job is done correctly, it goes unnoticed, and that's precisely what we're after. people should be engrossed in what they can see and hear and occasionally smell and feel. No one except people in our industry that have built these things will walk into an immersive environment and start looking at the details. So as AV integrators, and I'm sure there'll be other companies that fall into our sort of late stage of the job category, we often get forgotten. But as our bit goes on, people do begin to see it's as important as any other stage of the project. Not quite as much as the design, but any other area, I think it's on par with. Especially in our company, people lacking passion don't last long at all. We all do this for the love of what we do and our interests, and it all just relies on that magic. And without wanting to create that magic for families and people all around the world, you just don't get very far, especially with all the long hours that we put in. So my project process differs quite massively from quite a lot of other people's that I have seen. It starts off with receiving from my director in charge all of the drawings and the equipment list for said job. So I'll go through and check all of the kit and make sure that all of the bits and pieces we're using aren't on ridiculous lead times, and that it will all, of course, work together. At which point I will go back to the project management team or the designers or whoever is in charge of our company and suggest changes and additions, adding things like show control, which is quite often forgotten, and seeing if I can persuade them to spend that little bit more money to make the client's life a bit easier, or indeed add to the environment or whatever show we are doing. Within DGW, we have quite a range of skill sets, and not one person carries all of them, so we have to be very careful about picking the right team for the right time, especially. So we have installers, we have fixers, we have finishing engineers, we have programmers, and it's having the right guys at the right time and picking the right team to make sure the job goes as well as it possibly can. Once I've done those three, I then deconstruct the job. So to me, that's taking it down to the last nuts and bolts, looking at the drawing, saying there's a projector there. How am I going to fix it? What am I going to need? What bracketry am I going to need? All the way down, as I said, to the nuts and bolts of it. And then reconstruct the job to make sure that I've got absolutely everything that I need and get it sent out. Preparation stations is what I refer to as sort of fabrication and procurement, making sure that we've got all of the kit on order, speaking to our admin team to make sure that I'm going to get it at the right times, and then building any bespoke bracketry or interesting gubbins that need to go in on the job. And then logistics, which is often forgotten when talking about project management. Getting not only the equipment to where it needs to go, but the staff and any other contractors that we are having beneath us, and getting them all in the right place at the right time. So planes, trains, automobiles, and all of the packages and stuff that we are going to need as well. Then we finally get to the installation, where I know some project managers tend to manage a bunch of projects, whereas I only manage one at a time, because I go and site manage my own install, because I like getting down and dirty with it and making sure that everything ends up looking fantastic. Then once it's installed, the opening's done, we tend to get a snagging list through. I always run an internal snagging list, so in my head all the time I'm going around and picking apart our work to make sure that everything is as absolutely perfect as it can possibly be. And then we go into support to look after the client and the job once it's all done and dusted. It's stuff like looking at projector lamps and media players and making sure they have backups of what they need, backups of all of the media if the media company have not given them any. As I said, spare lamps, spare media players, a couple of spare speakers sometimes. Just making sure they've got everything that they could possibly need to make sure that attraction lasts as long as it possibly can. And I think that's me.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. So as a reminder, if you've got any questions for our guests, they have volunteered to answer those questions at the end of our presentations today. So go ahead and submit those questions through the question feature. We'll do our best to get them answered. If for some reason you have any issues with that, send them to TEA host with Q&A on the end as a chat message, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Finally, today we're going to hear from Clint Brinker, Director of Project Management at Birket Engineering. Clint manages the worldwide portfolio of projects through offices based in Florida, Hong Kong, Shanghai, where he's actually at the moment, and Singapore, leveraging experience gained over years in project management, including time in the Navy. So be very thankful Clint is with us today. It's something like 1:30 in the morning over there. So Clint, we definitely do appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
All right, thanks, Joe. Like you said, it's a wonderful night here in Shanghai, and as Chris pointed out, we do it for love, and I'm happy to be here with everybody. So happy to have everyone on the line tonight. I wanted to just touch on that last piece of tonight's topic, which is the tools. I think Aimee and Chris did a good job of taking a real comprehensive look at everything, and I'm just going to focus on one particular element here. So project collaboration with a social media twist. It's a fun title, and we'll go into that a little bit about what that means. The titles here are saying project management processes can be a little confusing, and I took a snippet from the PMBOK, which is Project Management Institute's standard for project management. So any of you folks out there who are taking courses or studying to become PMPs or CAPMs, you'll definitely get acquainted with that, the PMBOK body of knowledge. So you'll learn very fast that the PMI approach to project management is very comprehensive, and sometimes it's like fitting 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. But you know, the trick is learning how to adapt all of the processes, which are all necessary and required to thoroughly manage your projects, but learning how to adapt those to the situations that you run into, and how to focus them on the project, no matter how big or small it is. So in that light, you know, tools are necessary to make PM practical. You have to know how to use your tools, choose the right tools. And in the case of our company, what I'm going to focus on is a tool that we've chosen to help us manage our projects better. So tools of the trade. Like a lot of business project management and anything otherwise, it's email, email, email. Everybody wants to do everything by email, and that can be overwhelming. Email is good because you know, right now I'm in Shanghai and I have people in Hong Kong and people in Florida and people in California even that I communicate with regularly. So there's a lot of asynchronous communication going on there, and so email is the default. Everybody has email, and it all seems to work pretty well, and you can send reasonable sized documents on it. And you know, it's in a lot of ways it kind of serves the same purpose as Microsoft Word or your other word processing kind of program. And I apologize for anybody who's not a Microsoft fan here, but I just use this as an example because so many people use it. But the tools you see here, you know, Excel, OneNote, Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, you're going to deal with those a lot, or their equivalents anywhere you go, because that's how you create the documentation. You have to do these things. You have to master these things, and hopefully those of you here in college right now are taking it very, very seriously, and you know, working to become ninjas at using things like Excel and Word, because that's going to pay dividends in the workplace. You definitely don't want to struggle with those tools when you get there. So then PM software comes into play after you've made the documentation. And in a lot of cases, you might use Microsoft Project and do some document sharing and team collaboration, so to speak, through SharePoint. These are like the mainstays of a lot of big corporate project management systems. So you'll definitely learn, again, in school, how to use programs like Microsoft Project or other ones, Primavera, other things like that, and almost absolutely going to learn a little bit about SharePoint and run into that. But the next slide here kind of takes apart three of the things here that you see, and the main one that I focused on first being email, and then pulling away things like project and SharePoint, and think about a world where you have a little less email and a little more social media. Well, we talked about age gaps and the age groups involved here, and as people, younger people are coming up, people who grew up in the age of the internet and the age of Facebook, and even before that MySpace. I might be showing my age, but the thing is we tend to think as much in terms of social media for communication as we do for email. So your text messaging and all these other little short and sweet ways to talk to each other using a little bit of plain text and a little bit of photos and more of the social media tool as opposed to an email Word document kind of tool. Our minds, the younger minds, tend to think that way and work that way. And good news for you, project management software is beginning to rapidly move in that direction due to the value of being able to work in large groups. The goal then is to let the state of the art of project management to move with the times, move with the people in the way we process information these days. So getting away from traditional PM software and getting away from traditional document sharing per se, like with SharePoint. So we at Birket Engineering have moved to one of the newer tools, so to speak, or a forward-thinking tool at least. We took on a system called Workfront. It was just recently changed names. It used to be called @Task. So if you are looking around the web, you may see things that reference a software called @Task, and it is Workfront. It's the same thing. But Workfront is an approach that it's a software that's been around for about 15 years, I want to say, and it's very heavily geared toward allowing people to work in a very social way and to roll in all of the tools that you would use to communicate with each other and manage all of the elements of a PM plan, like your budget and your schedule and so forth, and also to manage all of your documents in a way that's very, very easy, like a Dropbox box, or any of those sorts of things that you may be using to trade files, big files that won't fit in an email with each other. So Workfront was just the choice that we made. And so the next topic here is, why does Birket use Workfront? Well, we like the fully integrated approach. We're a systems integrator. We integrate show control, ride control, specialty lighting systems, pyrotechnics, stage shows, stunt shows, you name it. That's what we do. We integrate. And so why not integrate our own work in our own house with our own people? Especially now that in the last several years we've expanded overseas and we have offices of people who are speaking different languages or in different time zones. You need to manage that asynchronous communication as best as possible. So the approach that this tool takes that we like, and there are others like it, I'm only using this as an example of what the industry uses. This is what Birket uses. So don't take this as an advertisement or an advocation for this software specifically, but simply for the approach of using this fully integrated social media aspect. So again, we use this because it allows us to plan our projects and have our planned work organized with work breakdown structures and all the elements that you would have for the tasking or activities within your work breakdown. So we manage our dates, our planned hours, our planned costs, revenues and such. And then we also can manage the ad hoc, the requests that just pop up, because things always change. And we manage our scope change control. And because we're an engineering company as well, we have engineering change control to manage as well, and other things. And this software allows us to very cohesively manage all that. It also creates the networked people approach, like systems such as Facebook and LinkedIn and all these other things that everybody's a part of that, I would imagine. It takes that same kind of look and feel to the people that are a part of our system. And that's just great. It tends to roll in all the things that are modern for today into one software. And the document sharing, like I said, is much like a Dropbox kind of a feel when you use it. So all these new state-of-the-art systems that are super easy to use, and they even use little cheeky comments and fun ways to describe things like, oops, you did something wrong, or whatever. Little fun ways to describe how to do something and what you see and so forth. It makes the system very fun and easy to use, believe it or not, even though it is work. And then the reporting aspect, which is of utmost importance for the success of a business, so that financial management can be done, executive steering can be done. The people at the top need the information to make good decisions about how things are doing and where we're going. So reporting is also a part of this system. It's great because we can, using the tools that are provided, data mine all of the good stuff that's in there that each individual person contributes to roll up to the top. The reason I said, like just said on the last slide, an easy and comprehensive tool that promotes communication up and down the org. Yes, the up and down the org is a very important thing to be noted, because PM has a really bad history of or perception of history, where everyone sort of thought of project management as a very top-down thing. There's a lot of people working hard out there doing their thing, and there's some guy or a lady walking around with a clipboard, and they're sort of taking down notes and asking questions, and then they go back and then they take their cut on what they think is going on, and they report that up. And so you sort of get this almost really like a second-hand negative management approach to what's going on. Now, of course, people don't always work that way, but some folks really had a really bad perception about how that works, and it's normally the people that were reporting to those project managers. Some people feel like their information isn't making it where it needs to go, but these new systems are great because with technology being what it is and everybody has access to the machine, people can contribute really useful tidbits of information that make the whole system that much brighter and smarter. And so, if someone asks you to do something done, you can see an example here. Hey, I've got a thing that I need you to do, and I need it done by, in the example, August 11th, and then you say, hey, that's great, but I can't have that done until August 15th. Well, that's great stuff, and wouldn't it be awesome if you could just click a date on a calendar, send it up, and somebody says, oh, well, that's okay, and then they click their button, and now all the schedules are updated. It's amazing stuff, and that's what our system does for us. So that's just another example of how the doers, are really giving their information in a meaningful and useful way. So true collaboration, builds a cohesive team leadership, because everybody is a leader in their own right for what they're doing, and this system also allows them to take ownership and leadership of their work. Last slide here. Like I said, I didn't want to too much advocate Microsoft Office, obviously, or our system at all, but I really do advocate the style of communication and collaboration that's facilitated by the tool that we use. And so I encourage all of you out there, especially you students out there doing projects where you have opportunities, you're working with some of your classmates or whatnot, to use some of these softwares that use this style, like Basecamp, Asana, Huddle. A lot of these will have, there's others as well. I just mentioned a few that I'm aware of. They have free trials or limited team size trials and things like that. So, at no cost in a lot of cases, you can sort of get a leg up on trying to use this sort of thing to manage your own projects. So I encourage you to reach out there when you have an opportunity and just try it out. Get you and your friends, your classmates together, sign up for free, try one of these things out and learn what it's all about, and get a a handle on where PM tools are going and begin to master that the same way you need to master your spreadsheets and your word processing documents. So that's all I have. Again, I'm Clint Brinker with Birket Engineering, and I'm happy to be here for you. Joe?
Thank you, Clint. So that takes us through all of our presentations. Again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please go ahead and submit those now. We've got a couple in the queue, so I'm going to start through those. As a reminder to all of our presenters, I'm going to ask the question of a particular person, and once they answer, everyone else feel free to chime in, and we'll give everyone an answer. So the first question is for Aimee. So Aimee, this was a really great question. Can you talk about how BaAM manages a project when things don't go as planned? What are some good things to note, and how do you do that? Ian asks.
When things don't go as planned, that never happens. No, I'm kidding. We have a saying here, plan the work and work the plan. So we, of course, try to plan for as much as possible, but things are bound to come up and the show must go on. But a great tool that we use in the planning stages is what we call a risk register. So it's a way for us to sit with our client and think about what could happen, what could come up that might jeopardize the project. So we try to anticipate all the possible things that could go wrong, and it gives us an opportunity to put these down in writing, to review them with our client, to think about the rating, like how likely is it that something like this will happen. So for example, it might be that if design approvals are delayed, or if there are production delays, and what will that do to the rest of the project schedule. So we put all these possible items on a list, review them with the client, rate how likely it might be possible that this happens, and then work out a solution to our client so that when something does go wrong, if it goes wrong down the road, we have a set action set in place. So we know how best to proceed, and we've been able to manage the expectations with our client from the beginning. But that's a really, really good question.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts on how to handle things going wrong?
Well, pretty much everything goes wrong, but it's just adapting and surviving. Nothing goes ever as planned, so it's just working with us. It's all about working with a team around you, especially for us. We come in so late in the day. We've got the software people, media people, designers, all the other contractors are all already there, and all of a sudden we walked in and gone, there's a beam in the way of my projector. So we end up having to adapt and have lots of discussions and lots of chats with everyone else there to work out how we're going to get around it as a team, because you can't just say it's down to one contractor or one person or it's one person's fault. Fault is by the by. It's about working together to make sure everything gets there in the end. So let's go on ahead.
I'm very glad you said it that way. The fact that fault isn't as relevant. It's a matter of getting it done and taking care of it. And you can always sort out whose blame it is later if you have to. But in the end, it's just a matter of getting the show to go and getting the client to be happy.
Oh.
Clint, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm a newbie to this, so I apologize as a presenter. I just realized I have a question from Erica and another from David. I'm going to try to answer them real quick, if that's all right if I take two. Erica asks, for PM software, what kind of scheduling software do you find most useful for collaboration? Okay, well, for collaboration purposes, honestly, what ends up happening in my experience is that no matter what software you use, it will almost always export to Microsoft project format. So I recommend that if you're not already using Project, you use whatever you like, but it's sort of like, in general, English being the language of business, sometimes Microsoft is the language of computers. So you have to default to that format to collaborate a lot of times with other people who are using, who knows what. The scheduling software, like I said, I prefer the kind like what we have with Workfront, where it's more integrated with the other things that we do. So I would heavily suggest that you use whatever you want, with the caveat that it has an ability to export to MS Project format. Okay, and next question was from David. For Clint, Workfront looks awesome. Has everyone at Birket bought into it? Was it an easy transition for the company to make? Oh, David is a wise person. That's a good question. So it's, naturally people resist change. So no, it wasn't necessarily an easy process, nor is it now. Like projects, being a progressively elaborating living thing, organizational change is always tough, and it elaborates progressively, and it always has its pros and cons. And I will say that has everyone bought into it? To answer that question, yes. Was it easy? No. But like a lot of things in life, you have to have, a good quality of a PM is that you have to be a little bit stubborn, you have to stand your ground, and you have to push forward positively, and with a good attitude and with the purpose of doing what's best for everybody involved. And so when you do that, more often than not, your work will reveal itself to everyone, and they will see the results. And even if they were skeptical or they gave you a little friction, in the end, everybody sees the benefit, and so they slowly start to yield with the frustration, and people start to more and more come on board with what you're doing. So I hope that answers your question. Joe?
Thanks.
What do we got next?
So, Chris, you answered this one by text, but let's go ahead and expound on this a bit. As a 20-something project manager, what specific tricks do you have to prove your worth and gain respect from your elders? David asks.
I tried to put that a bit more poignantly than I will now. Going full on honey badger is how I describe it. Like relentlessly never giving up on yourself and never giving up on your confidence level, and not letting someone that just because they're older than you doesn't necessarily mean that they know more about what you're actually talking about than you do. So I tend to just stick to my guns, stick to the truth, stick to the equipment and my knowledge, and generally it seems to slowly drip feed its way through to those people that aren't interested in working with young people. But I would say when I first started, and the jobs I first started working on, pretty much half and half were not interested in what I had to say versus interested. Nowadays it's pretty much 95% of it. I've been kicking around in sort of, especially in museums in England now for quite a while, and being my father's son, people tend to recognise the name, and that I'm still here means I must have something. And I appreciate that's not the same for everyone else, but it's just making sure that you're honest with everything. There's no point in answering a question, yes, that can be done, and then having to backtrack later. I will always say, I think this, but I will check on it. Go away, check on it, come back with the actual answer. And I find that people do respond very well to that.
I think another important point is to not take it personally, and to not make it personal going back the other direction, where you focus on solving the problem, you focus on the work, and realize that their inherent bias is built into them, and you're probably not going to fix it. All you can do is show them that you know your stuff, and eventually they'll either come around or they won't, and you have to realize that it's no reflection on your abilities.
Well said.
Yes.
All right.
One thing I want to add to that is I want to channel Steve Birket, our TA president, and the story he loves to tell from back in his WDI days, when he said, I think it was his first day on the job as a project manager, and his boss came up to him very quietly and slowly and got right close to his face, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "Nothing negative." And then he walked away. And so, yeah, the lesson to be learned there is nothing negative. Keep it positive, and everything will turn out all right.
All right. There's one last question. Excuse me. This was a question Michelle asked, and she wanted to know what were some of the prior roles that a project manager or communications manager might have in order to prepare for a life in this themed entertainment industry. And I'm going to actually take this one on first. Others can jump in afterwards. I actually came from 15 years in the education world and recently transitioned into this industry about 2 years ago now. And I've loved every minute of it. But I can tell you that it is a bit of a small industry, and making the transition can be challenging. But if you are passionate about it, it is absolutely possible. I will tell you that being a part of TEA was beyond crucial. It was absolutely the turning point and the key for me making my way into this industry, because I met people like Aimee and like Clint and Steve at the various TEA mixers and events. And so networking with those people and getting to know them, getting to know what they did, showing passion for what they did and learning about it, and then showing that I had transferable skills that would be useful to them is how I eventually made my way into this industry. And I actually work for Clint. So Clint is my project director. So hopefully that answers that question. Anyone else have any other thoughts on how you get into this crazy world of ours?
You jump in.
Both feet.
I was born into it.
Clint's got an interesting transition story as well, because he, like I said, his initial time was in the Navy, and this was just something he was very passionate about. So.
Right. I had my. If you remember back to Chris's story, I had my little Timmy moment when I was 6 years old, and I made the one big vacation we ever had to Disney World when it was only Magic Kingdom and Epcot, and I met Figment and Dreamfinder, and I was pretty much in from that moment. So. Always wanting from birth to be some kind of a architect, engineer, builder or something. I was like a Lego fanatic. I wanted to do that. And, eventually growing up, I joined the Navy, got into the engineering side of things. Did that for 12 years. I stayed hard in school. I got 2 bachelor's degrees, got a master's degree, going, taking advantage of all the programs I could have. And got my PMP, and I did all that stuff really, truly in preparation to join the industry. And so, an education never hurts, and experience even better. And if you have both, you're all set. So the only thing that's missing after that is networking. So, the transition to get out of the military and come into the themed entertainment, in the design side of it, it can be kind of tough. I honestly don't know. I don't personally know anybody else that's done it, so there's definitely people out there. I just haven't bumped into them. But I will say that key element, though, that I touched on is networking. You got to do what you're doing right now, get involved with organizations like the TEA, and the TEA is actually how I found my first contact, which was Ron Griffin with the Attraction Services Company. And you just get to talking to people, and you get introduced, and and it all just, it's like magic. It just happens from there. And when you're a good quality person, people see that, and they get to know you, and before you know it, you're in.
I'll also put in a note here for volunteering. I am frequently described as a keener, someone who will jump in and do insane things just to be a part of the group, and that got some folks' attention and helped them say, hey, you should go talk to these people, because they saw that I was willing to put in the hours and do the work. And I still volunteer. I spent a good portion of last week volunteering at a TEA event, so there's definitely something to be said for that. So. Anyway, we're all out of time for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please check out our website at teaconnect.org. Please say thank you to our sponsors if you happen to see them, or send them an email and tell them thank you for spending time with us today. We certainly appreciate all of you taking the time. If you'd like to learn more about TEA or our Next Gen program, the information is at our website, again, teaconnect.org, or you can just ask any of our speakers or any TEA members. They'll be happy to point you in the right direction.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. For more information about the TEA, please log on to our website at teaconnect.org.